Aloha, this is Dr. Steve, and this is Chapter 10 in the Web Development Design Foundations with HTML5 textbook. This chapter is on web development. There's only going to be one lecture for this chapter, as this is not a particularly technical chapter. It's more conceptual, if you will. It deals with small to middle-sized projects where you're working together. Okay, so learning objectives here are describe the skills, functions, and roles needed for successful web project development. Utilize the stages, identify other common system development methodologies, apply the system development life cycle, which you should all be kind of familiar with already. Describe activities in the conceptualization, etc., steps. Find the right web host provider, choose a domain name for your website, and that's about it. Okay. So what are the different roles? So we need to have a project manager. Somebody's got to take control over this thing. An information architect. Somebody who can organize the content into different pages and stuff. User experience designer, so that somebody can design how the user is going to interact with the site. Marketing representative, somebody who tries to, does the search engine optimization and marketing of the site. Copywriter and editor, make sure everything is spelled right. Content manager works with the information architect, make sure the content is correct. Graphic designer, self-explanatory. Database administrator, if needed, network administrator, make sure the throughput is okay. And then, of course, the web developer or web designer, which is a lot of what is going on in this class here. Okay, so the skills are all the same, kind of, regardless of whether or not you're in a large project or a small project. If you're a smaller group, then each person might have to wear many hats, and they juggle their job roles. But all these things have to be taken care of. So, as an example, a web designer could also be the graphic designer. It depends on the person and the project. It depends on the person and the project. Okay, it's real important to find the right person to make sure that the right person fits that role. You might consider things like their experience, their portfolio, their education, certification, and just their general preference. What do you like to do? If somebody does not like to do graphic design, maybe don't have them do the graphic design. There's probably a reason why they don't like to do it. And of course, you can outsource stuff. Besides the group, you can also hire people from outside and say, hey, do this. The website development cycle is similar to any kind of software development cycle. You have to kind of think of the idea, conceptualize. You figure out what the requirements are. You design or you define a solution. Then you produce the actual production. And you have to test things. Test. Launch the site. Fix little things, because after you test it, things are still not working right. You have to maintain it, fix it, and evaluate. Okay, how did that go? And then you keep on going around and around and around. It's a cycle. It keeps on going. It's never perfect. So one of the things you have to do is determine the intended audience. Who is this website for? What's your demographic you're trying to reach? And think about it clearly. Determine the goal or mission of the site, short term, long term, and think about how you might want to measure those things. It could be measured in visitors or product sales or whatever. What's your metric? So you got to, of course, figure out what the information topic is, what it is you're going to be writing about, what your functionality requirements are. That is, what will the site do and how will it do it? Any kind of environmental requirements. What does it need in the server? The content requirements. What content do you need? Graphics or whatever. If it's a redesign, you compare the old approach with the new approach. We review competitors' sites. Always do this. Look what other people are doing. So you have to at least match that or do better, right? Estimate the cost and decide via cost-benefit analysis whether or not it's even worth it. Okay, let's take a look at design here. So a design might look at the site organization. You might prototype the design. I highly recommend prototyping the design before you put too much time and energy into it. Just try it out, try a layout, try to figure out if this is right and pass it by other people. and then document each page. You need to have comments throughout. Comment everything. You'll be thankful you did, and you'll curse yourself if you don't later on. The production, you need to choose a web authoring tool. There are many out there. Right now, we're sticking with Notepad++. Organize the site files. I highly recommend putting things in organized folders. Develop and individually test components, and add content. Notice that add content is at the end. You're going to be doing everything else first, doing the design and organizing things before you even put content in. So don't do that too early, please. Test on different web browsers, different versions of the browser. Test on different screen resolutions, different bandwidths, different locations. Test, because you don't have control, more likely than not, over what your end user is going to be using to access the site. So you want to make sure that it works and looks good, right? It's not too much. You can use automated testing tools and validation, like I've pointed to on the W3C sites. Test how the actual pages are going to look. Do it before you upload it and do it after you upload it. Yeah, just test. So, yeah, test before, test after, create backup copies. Now, in group projects, you might find yourself needing some sort of a checkout system. You can use GitHub, that sort of thing, or a SharePoint server if you're using Microsoft. You can just have a file naming protocol that you use, and if you make changes in it, maybe you make a notation in the file name. Take turns, back up everything, back up. Sometimes you're working on the same files. You gotta make sure you play nicely. Maintenance is never ending. You're always adding things to it, fixing things to it. It's the nature of the beast. Kind of get used to that. And always reevaluate. Is this really what we want to do? Are we meeting our objectives or not? You have to constantly go back to that cycle over and over again. Okay, so at this point, here's some idea of the project manager. Project manager kind of oversees all these different roles. They might also play some of those roles. You should be able to understand why you need so many people, especially in large-scale projects. And you might be able to list 3 different techniques used to test a website. How would you test it? Okay, so a domain name. Now you need to go get a domain name. It's just used via ICANN. They are the domain names rulers. I do business. You often choose a domain name when selecting the company name, so make sure those things match. Established business, you might have to do a little more searching, but I'm sure you can find something. But something that describes the business, be brief, avoid hyphens. Although I've noticed hyphens have gotten a little bit more popular lately. Your top level domains are going to be something like .com, .net, .mobi, that kind of thing. .org for nonprofits. Actually, there's a whole slew of new top-level domain names. You can just brainstorm with your partners and colleagues potential keywords. Avoid trademark words or phrases. Get rid of Disney, anything sounding like Disney. Know the territory, that is, use Google, see what your competition's like. And you can verify the availability. Now you can register the domain name a number of places. Now you can always go to GoDaddy and pay them a huge chunk of money, or you can go directly to ICANN or register.com or a whole number of other places and do this at a minimal price. Now web hosting, that's different from the domain name. So web hosting has to be where the site is actually hosted, where those files are, what server it's on. Now more likely than not, it's not going to be on your home computer because you're not going to have a static IP. You need a static IP address for a web server. There are lots of different hosting services out there. You can Google that. If you use a poor web hosting service, you'll dread that. You'll have lots of problems. Free web hosting can be okay, but it has its limitations. For a serious commercial endeavor, be very careful. Spend the money, and get something that has good services. Virtual hosting, very common now. Everything is going into a virtual machine. What we use in this class here is a virtual machine up at Manoa. I've used virtual machines in pretty much everything for the last half a dozen years. Uh, Let somebody else deal with the maintenance and upkeep of the hardware. But you need to consider things like the future growth and scalability. Can you get more space and more services? The operating system, are you going to be using Windows or Apache, or what are you going to be doing? The types of processing you need, the bandwidth of internet connection, a lot of things. You get technical support. If it goes down, how often does it go down? You don't want something that goes down very often at all. So you got to think about things like a dedicated web server. So that is a machine that's only doing that one thing. A co-located web server. As I was mentioning, we use these servers up at Manoa, so it's co-located there. You have to consider things like the guaranteed uptime, again, the technical support, bandwidth, all these things are really important. And I talk a little bit about dedication there, co-located. Like I said, this is what we do. It's a little bit easier this way. We have to pay something, but to Manoa, but they can take care of it. They have better expertise. The things you need to be considering, and this is also in your textbook, I think table 10.1, are things like the operating system, the web server software, bandwidth, technical support, any service agreement, disk space, how many emails you get, how fast the bandwidth is uploading, downloading files, canned scripts that you can use, and so on. This is really important. And of course, price, right? Don't forget price. You do have limitations on money. Okay, you should be able to describe the host. You should be able to describe the difference between dedicated servers and co-located. And of course, you should understand why price makes a difference. All these things matter. Okay, and the reason why I cover this chapter now is because you're going to be doing a group project, and it's important for you to be able to understand how to work together and the various things you need to do. Well, that's about it. I think I will see you later. Aloha.